Time now for Keller at Large. Here's John.
Thanks very much for joining us. You know, high-profile elections for governor or president, they don't have any problem drawing turnout. Not so much for your local municipal elections, which take place this coming Tuesday, November 4th. But a case can be made. Those elections are every bit as important to the future of your schools, your taxes, and your community at large as those big-name races. So let's take a look at some of the more interesting races which will be decided on the 4th in our viewing area with ace political reporters Kelly Garrity of Politico, Massachusetts, author of the daily Massachusetts Playbook, and Gin Dumcius, editor and columnist for the State House News Service's daily Massterlist newsletter, where, full disclosure, you can also read a weekly column from your humble host, ever humble. Gin, Kelly, great to have you here. Thanks for coming over. So let's start with some mayoral races. Let's check out Everett, where six-term incumbent Carlo DiMaria is being challenged by Robert Van Kampen, a member of a city council that recently took a unanimous vote of no confidence in DiMaria as part of an uproar over the mayor's salary bonuses. Gin, what's the significance of this one? You said you wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Well, I think it's very interesting because the last race, my understanding is that the last time the mayor was up, it was a fairly close race, and this is promising to be very close too, specifically because of the Inspector General's report questioning the longevity bonuses and kind of raising a lot of questions about how the mayor's been conducting business, and that's created an opening for a challenger.
It's interesting. So much has gone on in Everett in recent years. The casino coming in, now the soccer stadium and so forth. What do you make of what's going on there, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting time for the city right now. I mean, I think what Gin pointed out about the report, I think that it will be really interesting to see if that's something that voters in the city are kind of factoring into their decision when it comes to the mayoral race.
Well, you know, that's certainly true in other city mayoral races. In Lawrence, incumbent Brian DePena's challenger Manny Gonzalez has claimed election interference in a number of different ways. And I guess Secretary Galvin is looking into that. What's the story up there?
Yeah, so the Secretary of State's office got some reports of that some absentee ballots, they seemed to be incorrectly filled out. And some of those reports came from Manny Gonzalez, who's challenging Mayor DePena there. The Secretary of State's office had decided to get involved there. It's not a full investigation. Right. It's not a full kind of investigation at the moment, but they did issue guidance for the city's elections department, and so they're kind of monitoring how things are going there. Early voting is already underway there, and there's already been some kind of back and forth from both of the mayoral campaigns there. DePena, I believe, wanted more guidance on what it means to be assisting voters in the booths for folks who need help filling out their ballots.
Wow.
And Gonzalez's campaign was saying that there was already kind of some violations from DePena after the guidance from the Secretary of State's office.
Gin, does this surprise you? I mean, we had issues with the Boston mayoral election last time around. Does it surprise you that these things still pop up?
I mean, I think this is kind of a little different from the Boston mayoral contest there. But I think in this case, I mean, when we started talking about this, my first thought went to Willie Lantigua, you know, and kind of the mayor, state rep there, and kind of had a reputation as the James Michael Curley of Lawrence. So, you know, that's one of the reasons that bears watching. I'm kind of like, does this actually metastasize into something, or is it kind of a tempest in a teapot? Well,
I've got to take a break here, but when we come back, obviously money is tight at the municipal level all across the state, and it's playing a key role in several other races. And we're going to talk about them when we continue our conversation about Municipal Election Day, Tuesday, November 4th. Get out and vote if your community is voting. And we'll do that with our guest experts in just a moment, so please stay with us. Welcome back to our conversation about Municipal Election Day, kind of a preview here with our guest experts, Gin Dumcius of Massterlist and Kelly Garrity of Politico, Massachusetts. So We mentioned the financial issues. All cities are kind of struggling to pay the bills these days, and they're particularly, what's the word I want, divisive politically when it involves the schools. The teacher unions, of course, that's their job, is to push for more money for their members. A lot of communities there's been pushback. There have been divisive strikes in recent years. Let's talk a little bit about that. In Newton, there's a really polarized race for school committee with a union slate and a non-union slate. In Gloucester, the incumbent Greg Verga finished second in the preliminary, in part reportedly because of fallout from last year's teacher strike. Am I right that this is a consistent pattern? Are you seeing this, Gin, across the region?
Sure. Well, I would say that when the Mass Teachers Union, they put out a statement recently, there were questions about whether they would mount another ballot campaign in 2026, and what they said was, no, we're actually going to focus on local races. And the MTA does have a super PAC that has been spending on local races. So, as you mentioned, a slate in Newton.
Yeah. So even in Northampton, Kelly, you pointed this out, arguably the most liberal or one of the most liberal communities in the state, there's a division between the mayoral incumbent and her challenger over this very issue, how much, whether or not to go for an override to help spur spending.
Yeah, so there was actually a whole group set up in Northampton called Support Our Schools, and they ran essentially a slate of candidates. They endorsed 14 candidates for mayor, for city council, for school committee. They raised about $30,000 to spend in the local elections there, and a lot of their issues were with the FY25 budget in that city resulted in some staffing cuts in the schools. There weren't any cuts in the FY26 budget, but a lot of the folks there who wanted to see the schools be fully staffed said essentially we still don't have enough staff because of the previous cuts. So they started running candidates there to try to make a change.
Again, it feels like we're headed for a real showdown in the state over this issue of municipal finance. Mayor Wu, who of course is running unopposed on Tuesday, she really raised some eyebrows the other day by coming out explicitly and calling for the repeal of Proposition 2.5, which limits the growth of local property taxes, even though Boston has never had an override. Did that surprise you the way it surprised me?
Well, she said something similar when she was at the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce just after the prelim. She talked about the revenue picture overall, and she obviously disagrees with the home rule setup that Beacon Hill has, right? If a city or town wants to increase revenue or something along those lines, they have to go up to the legislature. So she's been hitting that for a while. The Prop 2.5 questions that she's raised is another extension of that.
Well, except you don't need Beacon Hill's permission to put an override or a debt exclusion on the ballot. You just need to know that you've got the support of the voters, and it's never been tried in Boston. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is pretty interesting. It is interesting too, though. The way Boston's finances work are a little more complicated and are a little different than a lot of other municipalities.
Downtown, yeah.
True. Well, there's going to be a lot for us to talk about after the fact. And we'll look forward to having you both back here to do so. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
and thank you very much for watching. And whatever you do, if you've got an election in your city or town, get out there and vote. Don't let somebody else decide the future of your home, your taxes, your family. Thanks very much for watching.